Greetings. My name is Dr. Tanya Matthews, President and CEO of the International African American Museum. The International African American Museum is an encyclopedic museum of African American history that traces our journey from origin stories on the continent of Africa all the way up to modern times. We are located at the site of Gadsden's Wharf, reclaiming the spot, one of our nation's most prolific transatlantic slave ports.
Charleston will forever be recorded in history as the place where countless Africans came to our nation as slaves, but now, today, Charleston can forever be recorded as the place where generations of true history and stories were set free to be honored.
It makes every sense in the world for there to be an African American museum in Charleston because 48.1% of all of the African slaves that came to the United States entered this country through Charleston. That's virtually half of all the slaves. On the eve of the Civil War, when the federal census was taken in 1860, there were over 100,000 more black slaves in South Carolina than white people. South Carolina was known as Negro country because there were so many black people here. And there were only two states in which white people were the minority on the eve of the Civil War, Mississippi and South Carolina. So blackness, black culture, the African experience, the African American experience, slavery, however you want to slice it, this is ground zero.
We had a story to tell, and it was an important story for our country, not just local history, and that if it wasn't told here, in a place that was so significant in the history of our country and Africans being brought here, if it wasn't told here, then it would be a huge omission and a serious and abject failure of responsibility.
I think this IM will certainly be a vital part in bringing to the forefront what African American history is all about. And in addition to the children, I think those who are educators would certainly be stimulated to do more and learn more about African Americans.
I think for future generations it'll be particularly important for them to understand that the Africans who were brought here were talented people. They brought technological skills, and this is particularly important for Charleston and the Low Country in general. This develops as a primary rice-producing area along the coast of South Carolina and Georgia, and people always have to be reminded of this. You know, this is an English colony, and the British Isles are in the North Atlantic, so you couldn't grow rice there, and so the English come here, the British come here, but they don't have a history of rice cultivation. Well, how does this develop? Well, it develops through the harnessing of African technological skills.
It's wonderful being in the city where there is a concerted effort to preserve the history and culture of Charleston relative to the impact of the African American culture within this community. Charleston, Gadsden Wharf has a history like none other. Again, going back to the percentage of African subjects that were brought to the Low Country through Gadsden Wharf, no other port city has that history like Charleston, and that's a history that needs to be preserved.
What a fantastic moment to be alive as a person who oversees education, in a moment where the idea of the African American experience being quintessential to the American experience is being challenged around the nation. What a moment to be alive.
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina right now. I just went to the International African American Museum that just opened, and it was, first off, an incredible museum. I go to lots of museums, and this is one of the top that I've been to, because what I learned is absolutely mind-blowing. That I don't know this stuff. I'm 26 years old and I'm still having to actively learn about the terrible injustices in our country. Like today, I just learned that Charleston was one of the largest importers of slaves that would then ship off to all over the South. I didn't know that. In fact, I really didn't know that much at all until I left my small town. But for those that don't know much about me, I am a PhD student and I'm studying education policy, and I specifically study racial and gender gaps in education and injustices in education. So I actively seek out things like this to learn more about what the hell's going on in our country and why things are the way they are. I implore you to go to this museum because you will learn so much. If you're in Charleston, take the time. It's totally worth it, totally worth the money to really understand why our country is the way it is. If you're like me and you're tired of seeing the inequities and the inequalities, and the fact that we have a really deeply rooted systemic racism, no matter what people try to tell you, it really does exist, you should go visit this, among other many great museums across the country. But if you want to take some time away from the beach, check this out. You'll really appreciate it. But to continue my rant just a little bit longer, I'm really pissed off that I have to do all this research myself because it's being banned. You know, I used to teach 8th grade English actually. We taught Frederick Douglass, and nowadays you can't even talk about that stuff in the state of Tennessee because they're actively trying to ban the critical race theory and other racial and gender inequalities. We're not allowed to talk about that anymore. And if that doesn't scare you or at least alarm you, the fact that they're trying to whitewash the things that have happened in this country, you should probably check yourself because you should be very scared and very alarmed by what's going on. So do your research, figure out what's going on, and when it comes time to vote, think about who your vote goes to. I'm not saying who to vote for, I'm saying do your research and figure out which one is going to be the best to help our country push past the terrible things we've been doing for hundreds of years and actually change and get better. So there's my rant.
Our museum has the humbling privilege and responsibility of reclaiming the site of one of our nation's most significant transatlantic slave trading ports. And here, while we honor the figures and those we lost here, I am surrounded by the words of Maya Angelou's poem, "And Still I Rise." Because what we do is we tell our story in our full context, from 300 BCE all the way up to modern times. And then we invite you into our museum to see the art, the culture, the history, the stories, and to finish your journey at the Center for Family History, where you can explore your own story through our Genealogy and Ancestry Center. We all look forward to welcoming you here.